Hi there, welcome. My name is David. I'm the founder of Chocolate Tales and the Recreational Chocolatier Academy. Let's get started making some chocolate. I'd like you to think about this class as a science class. We're approaching this class with a different angle. It's not your regular feel of our other classes. It's the scientist in you that's trying to understand how chocolate actually interacts on a chemical molecular level. Once you master the art of understanding tempering, you'll be able to move on and use that as a foundation to achieve your other goals of making these beautiful chocolates and having all this fun. But let's first start as a scientist. So tempering is a study, it's science and it's art, and we need to trust the process. So hang in there, get through tempering, and I promise you, you're going to be able to achieve your chocolate making dreams. Being able to master the art of chocolate starts with one simple process: being a scientist, understanding the science of tempering. Let's remind ourselves, and I remind myself all the time, this is just fun. This is just chocolate. Nothing can go wrong. And actually the chocolate too, even if you don't temper it, you temper it, it'll still stay there for you. Because really at the end of the day, it's just fun. It's chocolate, it's delicious. I'm sure there's lots of people that are willing to eat your mistakes. So just let's have fun with it. Here we go. We're going to be melting our chocolate for the tabling method. What are you going to need? We're going to need a stovetop, a stock pot with about an inch of water. We're going to need 2 stainless steel bowls, a scale, some dark chocolate. We're going to need an offset spatula, a metal dough scraper, a spatula, and an infrared thermometer. What we're going to start doing is we're going to start by weighing out our chocolate. We want to make sure that we know how much chocolate we have in our bowl. So let's get started. Here we go. I'm going to turn my scale on, and I'm going to pour all of my chocolate into the bowl. When I pour the chocolate into the bowl, it's important that your scale is zeroed with the weight of the bowl included. Here we go. Now I'm checking to see, I've got 1,500 grams. I've got 1.5 kilograms of chocolate. I'm going to turn my stovetop on. In my case, I'm using an induction, but you can also use a gas range or anything that will provide heat to this element. And I'm going to cause my water to start to simmer, to boil. You can place your bowl on top, and I want you to make sure that the bowl you're using has a lip. So in order to make sure that your chocolate remains in good working condition, when you're melting the chocolate, a lot of steam is going to come up, and we want to make sure that that steam doesn't go into the chocolate. So having a lip on your bowl is very helpful. It'll just make all the water that condenses come right back down into the pot. So very important stuff. Chocolate and water do not mix. Water will ruin your chocolate. So please make sure you use the lip, because the steam will hit the lip and it'll come right back down as condensed water. Make sure that as you are working with your chocolate, you are mixing it. We want to make sure we don't burn our chocolate. If we do burn our chocolate, we're going to have a really, really hard time creating a temper. So what does that look like? So the chocolate itself needs to reach around 50 degrees Celsius. And I'll be able to use my wonderful infrared thermometer to do that. So when you point it at your item, whatever you're trying to check temperature for, in my case, my body, it'll tell you where you're at. So my external temperature, 32.3. For a chocolatier, that's pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to check the temperature of our chocolate. And right now, because it's not melted, it's at 17 degrees Celsius, which is fine. And we should also talk about the temperature of the room. Your room should be approximately 20 to 24 degrees Celsius. That's probably the best way to be. So here we go. Look at that. So right now, the steam is starting to come up. You can see all this beautiful steam coming right up. Again, my lip will stop the steam from going into the chocolate, so to say. And now it really indicates for me that it's time to mix. I'm going to mix really, really well. Once in a while, you get a few little bits of chocolate come out, put them right back in there. We want to use all of our chocolate. We don't want to waste even the speckiest speck of chocolate. So I keep going here, and you can notice how it's starting to melt first at the edges, and that's great. And then slowly, slowly, all the chocolate will begin to melt, just like that. So now I'm going to wait maybe 30 seconds or so, let that melt down, make some order here, get things ready for the next part. Now, notice how a lot of steam is coming up. I'm going to reduce the heat on my induction here so that I don't overheat my chocolate. And I mentioned earlier a temperature for working with chocolate. So each chocolate will have a different temperature, but for dark chocolate, we want to use 45 degrees Celsius as our indicator. So we want to make sure that all this chocolate reaches 45 degrees. And once that happens, we're going to take the bowl off. We're going to place it on the side so that it doesn't keep heating up. And I should mention another thing. If you reach around 43 degrees Celsius, you will actually also be able to take the bowl off your heat. Why? Because there is residual heat that's stored in the stainless steel, and that residual heat will keep warming up the chocolate. So whenever you're working with chocolate in this method, it's a great quick method to work with. But the disadvantage is that you do need to think of that. You need to think of the residual heat that's stored inside the bowl. And you want to make sure that you don't overheat your chocolate. Now, if you overheat this chocolate beyond 45 degrees Celsius, it's not a problem. As long as you keep under 60, you're going to be just fine. Why? Because we can always let this cool down a little bit. We don't have to start working with it straight away. Say we reach 50 degrees Celsius, we can just take the bowl, place it on the side here, and then just wait until it cools down so that we can start working with it. If you reach 60 degrees Celsius, that's a red flag. You want to make sure you don't go past that point, because then you can actually burn your chocolate. It's not like a toast burn. It's a burn that will cause your chocolate to become a lot less fluid, so more viscous, right? It'll become kind of gooier. It'll lose its agility, essentially. So notice what's happening. It's starting to melt really nicely here, and it's actually quite relaxing. I don't know if you've had this opportunity to melt chocolate often, but when you melt chocolate, it really is a relaxing activity. So you can kind of just sit and watch and mix and stir, and it's quite delightful. Now, as we wait, and notice I keep taking my temperature down as I reach my set point of around 45 degrees Celsius. And notice what's happening. The chocolate is starting to become quite liquid, right? But you still see little pieces of chocolate floating around inside. And we want to make sure that all those pieces of chocolate are completely eliminated. We don't want to have even just the smallest piece. Why? Because then you can't work with it. This chocolate is called a couverture. What is a couverture? Couverture is a chocolate that is meant for chocolate making. Couverture in French, to coat, meaning the fluidity in this chocolate is very high. And you can check the bean to bar process document that we have in this class, and you can learn a little bit about that. But essentially, it's the cocoa butter that makes it fluid. That creaminess you get in chocolate, that's all the cocoa butter. This is a dark chocolate. There's no dairy in it, and it's going to be creamy anyway. Why? Because of all the wonderful cocoa butter that's inside. So a couverture has to have high levels of cocoa butter in order for it to be nice and fluid and workable. So this is a chocolatier's chocolate, a couverture. Now you can join the ranks of the chocolatiers and know what a couverture means. Now we're getting really close. So we've got little pieces of chocolate still in here. So we're not there quite yet, but we are getting there. So I'm going to grab my infrared. I'm going to check for temperature. And I am at 43.7. Look at that. So we're right there. So I'm actually going to turn this off now. I'm going to take it off. Now I'm going to mix this really, really well while it's still on the flame or on the induction. And you can notice I'm still using the residual steam that's been created for me. I'm going to take it right off. So this is really important. Before you start working with your chocolate, make sure you wipe the bottom of your bowl. Wipe the bottom of your bowl from any residual water that might be there. Again, chocolate and water are grave enemies. We don't want them to mix, so we just make sure it's nice and dry. So now what I want you to do is I want you to mix this really, really well. One of the things I'd like you to note when you're mixing chocolate is really do your best not to get air into the chocolate. So you don't pound down, because when you pound down, the air goes in, and then there's lots of air bubbles, and then you have to work really hard to get those air bubbles out later on. So I'd like you to just mix while keeping your spatula inside the chocolate all the time, okay? And then you can see how nice and fluid that is. Look at that beautiful chocolate, ready to go. Our couverture, this is a 52% couverture, so 52% cacao. And I'm going to check my temperature. And right now, I'm at 42. So to me, that indicates, okay, David, hurry up, get this going, because you're starting to decline in your temperature. If you really go below 40, I'd like you to put it back onto the pot and heat it up just a little bit more. So let's get started with tabling. So what we're going to do now, we're going to turn on our scale, and I'm going to make sure it's zeroed with the weight of the bowl, like I mentioned earlier. I'm going to take 500 grams here, and I'm going to pour it into my bowl. And this is the indication. So we want to take a third of our chocolate, and we want to table that. And then what we're going to do is use our crystallized chocolate and pour it back into our bowl. And let's talk about that for just 1 second. So when we temper chocolate, we're trying to achieve crystallization of the beta crystal. There are 5 crystal formations in chocolate. Only one of them is stable. You have a tempering chart that explains that in detail, but the gist of it is when you melt chocolate, you're basically melting out all of your crystal formations, and you're causing the chocolate to be liquid. So just like with regular butter at home, if you put it in the microwave or heat it up, it'll become liquid and it has no more crystalline formations. The same applies here. So we're melting down all of our crystal formations, and they melt down at around 40 degrees Celsius. When you bring it down to 27 degrees Celsius, you get 5 crystalline formations. Those crystals are not all stable. They're wild crystals. Only the beta, the 5th crystal, is the one that's stable. So how do we achieve that? Here we go. I'm going to take my chocolate, and I'm going to bring it down to 27 degrees Celsius on my marble slab. Now, bringing it down to 27 degrees Celsius is great, but that's not enough. We also have to agitate. Why? Because when we agitate, when there's the presence of crystalline formations, we create more and more crystal formations. So these crystals are colliding, creating more and more crystal formations as they go. So we're going to do that part. Bring it down to 27, create crystalline formations, and then we're going to take all of our wonderful crystals and we're going to pour them into the warm bowl of chocolate. And what happens then? Then all the crystalline formations will melt away, except for our beta crystal. And that formation will stay in temper until we reach up to 33 degrees Celsius. So that means that when I pour this chocolate into here with all those crystal formations, with 5 crystal formations, 4 of them are going to melt away because they have a melt away point that's lower than the beta crystal. Okay? So here we go. Let's get this going. So I'm going to push these to the side. I'm going to pour all of my chocolate onto the marble, and then I'm going to use my dough scraper and my offset spatula to begin my tempering process. Notice I'm using a Carrara marble. You can also use man-made marble, so to say, or man-made stone. That's fine as well. The idea is that stone will store lower temperatures for longer. Okay? So here we go. Let's pour all this beautiful chocolate onto our marble slab. Just like that. And now I'm going to start working. So time is of the essence. We want to make sure that we get our crystalline formations, but we also want to make sure that it doesn't clump. If it becomes all chunky, unfortunately, it's not going to melt properly inside the warm chocolate. So here we go. So let's get that going. We're going to first spread it out on the marble, just like that. And now we're going to start collecting our chocolate to the center. Here we go, just like that. And I want you to notice what I'm doing. So I am shearing. This is called shearing. Listen to this. I am shearing all my chocolate, when I do this move here, when I do this, that creates a ton of crystal formations because it's cold and it's also being agitated. You can also, you don't have to, but you can also check your temperature to see where you're at. Let's have a look. Right now, I'm at 28 degrees Celsius, so it's not time. I could have told you that. How would I have known that it's not the right temperature? You can actually tell from the way the chocolate looks. So have a look at this, okay? Look at this chocolate over here, and look how liquid this chocolate is. It's just flowing, right? Just flowing, flowing, flowing. This chocolate over here, when it's ready, it's going to be very thick. Let's have a look. You can see now how this chocolate is starting to thicken up. Can you see that? Nice and thick. So let's keep going a little bit longer. We're getting there. And you can check the temperature again, and you'll see 24.9. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be 27. It could be lower. But 27 is the set point where the chocolate starts to become crystallized with all 5 crystal formations, including the wild ones. So now that it is much thicker, I'm going to check. I'm going to take my chocolate and I'm going to ribbon it across on the top, just like that. So notice how the ribbons are ridging on top. If they don't ridge on top, it means there's not enough crystalline formations to support that structure and it's not ready. So I'm going to pour all this into the bowl now. Ready? Here we go. 1, be decisive. 2, and 3, just like that. All the rest of this chocolate, don't put in the bowl because it's going to be shavings and we don't want that for now. So you can just kind of scrape all that away. We'll do a little bit of a cleanup later. Just like that. And now you want to mix, mix, mix really, really well. You want to get all that chocolate to incorporate into the warm chocolate. Just like that. And this is the other part. So now that I've placed it in the bowl, that's great. And we're very happy about that. We got our colder chocolate that has a ton of crystals into our warm chocolate. And now what we want is we want to make sure, first of all, that it's the right temperature. So again, the V-shaped crystal, the beta crystal, will only form properly, or can form properly, when all of its friends, the wild crystals, are gone. So what happens? When we pour all the 5 crystals into the warm chocolate, all the wild crystals will melt away and we'll be left with our stable crystal, our beta crystal. That crystal will be able to remain a crystalline formation until 33 degrees Celsius. But all the rest of his friends are going to disappear. And now what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're mixing vigorously so that that crystal will collide with itself, with its other beta crystals, and take over the batch so that when it cools down all the way below 27, those other crystalline formations won't be able to appear because the batch will already be structured with beta crystals. So let's check our temperature and see where we're at. Right now, I'm at 32 degrees Celsius, 32, which is perfect. That means that if I do my job now and just mix or agitate, if I do that, all these crystals will collide and they'll just overpower the whole batch. So now the chocolate's ready, okay? It's ready to go. And you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but I can definitely notice that this chocolate is a lot thicker than it was before, right? So now let's take this bowl, put that on the side for a moment, clean up our little mess here, which shouldn't be too difficult because this will be shavings at this point. And I'll show you a few other neat tricks.